Is it not on? Oh, okay, much better. Job's a God-fearing man. Maybe that's the reason why we had activity on here. Can't hear me. My wife says I'm a soft-spoken guy. Somebody read the first 7 verses of Job chapter 10, please. First 7 verses.
I loathe my own life. I will give full vent to my complaint. I will speak in the bitterness of my soul. I will say to God, do not condemn me. Let me know why you contend with me. Is it right for you indeed to oppress, to reject the labor of your hands, and to look favorably on the schemes of the wicked? Have you eyes of flesh, or do you see as a man sees? Are your days as the days of the mortal, or your years as man's years? That you should seek for my guilt and search after my sin? According to your knowledge, I am indeed not guilty, yet there is no deliverance from your hand.
You kind of get this idea. He's just questioning everything about life. You know, the whole premise behind Job, and even all the people of that day, is if you do good, good things are going to happen to you. And if you do bad, bad things are going to happen to you. It's like one of those prosperity gospels. You've ever heard somebody teach that on television? You know, if you just contribute $100 to the collection plate, you sow your seed to the Lord, you're going to get back tenfold. And they twist scriptures to their own devices, right? They're just trying to get more and more people to contribute to their offering. And so they promise them greater things if they just contribute more money to the Lord. And that's not, we understand that that's a perversion of the scriptures, that's twisting of it. But the idea behind that is if you do good, good things are going to happen. If you do bad, bad things are going to happen. But now something's happening to Job. Job is a righteous man. Job is a man who had been worshiping God all of his life. In fact, he even made offerings. If you look at Job chapter 1, he even made offerings on behalf of his children in case of his children doing something bad. I'm going to offer for them just in case. So he was a good man. And all up until this point in time, it seemed like everything was going good for him. Now something's bad happening for him, and it's causing him to come up with all these questions. Look at the last verses of Job chapter 10, verses 18 through 22. Why then have you brought me out of the womb? You ever had one of those days where you thought about that? Where it seemed like things were happening, one right after the other? I don't know if any of you remember the television show Hee Haw? Bloom, despair, and agony on me, right? Deep, dark depression, excessive misery. And each one of those guys would tell a story to try and one-up the other guy on a misery story, right? You thought you had it bad? Listen to what happened to me. And they'll one-up them. That's what's happening with Job. Why did you even bring me out of the womb? Oh, that I'd perished and no eye had seen me. Oh, I would have been as though I had not been, or I would have been as though I had not been. I would have been carried from the womb to the grave. Are not my days few? Cease, leave me alone, that I may take a little comfort before I go to the place from which I shall not return. To the land of darkness and the shadow of death, the land of dark as darkness itself, as the shadow of death without any order, where even the light is darkness. There's another chapter in there where Job is talking about how, you know, when it was day, I wished it was be night because I could at least get a little comfort in my sleep. And then when it was dark and I realized I wasn't getting any comfort in my sleep, I just wished it was day again. You know, he was miserable night and day. He couldn't get any rest or comfort whatsoever. Yes, sir. I mean,
He had positive, you take all the negative, but he had some very positive things too. He had positive thoughts.
he could reflect on the good, yes. In fact, what you're talking about is right after he was afflicted with those boils from the top of his head to the sole of his foot, the piece of advice that came from his wife, you remember what that was? Curse God and die, right? I'm going to assume that she was working from good motives. She sees the man she loves. I mean, she's lost the loss of her children too, right? They weren't just Job's children, they were hers. And they see she's under this assumption that if you do good, good's going to happen. And if you do bad, bad's going to happen. And she sees the man that she's loved. He's afflicted with all these boils. He's in pain continually. You know, there's a lot of people that have been in pain that they think the only recourse to ease their pain is to take their life. She's wanting him to be comforted at least a little bit. In fact, that's what he's talking about right here. Just let me go to the grave. He's not going to take his own life, but he wishes God would take his life. Let me go to the grave. Let me have a little bit of comfort here. But his response to his wife was, the Lord is given, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He's still not going to curse his God. He's still not going to deny his God is good and his God is righteous. He's questioning what is happening here. He's questioning a lot of things, and he begins to get into the area where he's almost beginning to question God's goodness because he's afflicting a righteous man in this way. But he's not going to condemn God. Now, his three friends, they're bringing up all sorts of false accusations against Job. These things are happening to you because you must have been doing something bad. You've been robbing the widow. You've been abusing the orphans or something like that. But they're accusing him falsely. They don't understand. Now, when we get to this idea that's coming to us in the book of Hebrews, you know, Hebrews is written to a bunch of Greek Jews, Hellenistic Jews, some Greek people that had converted to Judaism. And during this time of life, the Jews had begun to settle into a relative peace with the Roman government. But when you convert to Christianity, Christians are a different thing. Christians are still being persecuted. Many of you know what happened to Stephen, right? That wasn't really at the hands of the government, but you know what happened to Paul. Paul, by all accounts that we have, was a good, upstanding citizen until he became a Christian. Now, there's a lot of animosity between the Jews and the Christians because the Jews consider Christianity a perversion of the Hebrew religion or the Jewish religion. And so a lot of the animosity that happens between the government and Christianity is incited by the Jews. And so a lot of times when you get a person who's converted from Judaism to Christianity, like these people in the book of Hebrews are, you get this persecution that happens, and you're thinking, maybe I should go back to Judaism because Judaism wasn't so good, or wasn't so bad as far as persecution is concerned. And so when you look at the book of Hebrews is written to people that have become Christians, and the Hebrew writer, some people think it's Paul, some people think maybe Barnabas or Apollos, but we don't know for sure. We do know as a Christian who is well versed in the scriptures. Paul was well versed in the scriptures. Apollos was well versed in the scriptures by what Paul attests to in the book of Romans. But when we think about this idea, what the Hebrew writer is trying to convince these people about is even though you're going through this persecution, it's going to be fruitless if you go back to Judaism. You cannot go back to the Jewish religion because everything is better in Christianity. Everything is better. That's one of the key ideas in the book of Hebrews is everything is better the way we've got it now as Christians than what it was in Judaism. And actually, Christianity is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. It's not an addition to, it's the fulfillment, it's the culmination, it's the compilation of the Old Testament. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 32 through 39, gives us some examples of some of the things that were happening to these people. Somebody read Hebrews chapter 10, verses 32 through 39, if you would, please. Go ahead and listen.